Okay, so we've done equations, our one-step equations, so we're going to look at inequalities now. Remember, inequalities, you've got maybe off to the side somewhere, we can write this down. Your signs that you have, your symbols, you have the less than sign, the greater than sign, less than or equal to, and greater than or equal to. On your page, so you have that kind of there for you to look back at. Okay, so now that we have those, you're going to solve these the same way that we were solving those one-step equations. So you're solving them the same way until we deal with negatives, but we'll look at that here in just a second. So for example 1, I've got y or something, some number, plus 2 is going to be greater than 12. So for the time being, just to solve it, pretend like that greater than sign is an equal sign. And so we still want to start the same way we would start an equation. I want to start on the side that has more stuff on it because my whole goal is to get this by itself. And I can't start over here because then there would be nothing left. I have to keep these things balanced. So to get rid of that plus 2, I do the opposite. So I'm going to say minus 2 on both sides. So then I've got 12 minus 2 is 10. Bring down your y, and then bring down that symbol. So your answer looks like y is greater than 10. So whatever y is, we don't know. It's a number that's bigger than 10, something larger than 10. That's what that's telling you. And then example 2, same thing, and if you rewrite it, if you are someone that needs the variable to be on the left side, if you rewrite it, just make sure that when you rewrite your inequality sign, that the alligator mouth is open to the same side when you rewrite it. Alligator mouth always opens up to the bigger side. Okay, and 31. So then to solve, I've got 8 minus n is greater than 31. Or 31 is less than 8 minus n. So I want to get rid of the 8. I have to start on this side. I want the n by itself, so I'm going to get rid of the 8. Since there's not a sign in front of that 8, that means it's positive. And so the opposite of a positive number would be a negative number, or to subtract it. So then 31 minus 8, 23. Bring down your inequality sign and bring down your variable with the sign in front. Okay? So if I have the sign in front now, it's a negative. So anytime you see just a variable, you guys remember this, anytime there's just a variable there, it's an imaginary 1. So if I were to keep going, say that this was another step, this was a one-step equation, -1 times something is greater than 23. So that means since this is multiplication, I'm going to divide by -1. Divide by -1. I'm going to cross those out. If you divide by -1, so we'll get to this here in just a second, but there's a rule. If you're dividing by a negative, your sign in the middle doesn't like that. So when you divide by a negative, it flips that sign around. And that's the only time that happens. Only time that happens is if you divide or multiply by a negative. And I have a video that I can show you guys, and I'll put that in Google Classroom also. So anytime you divide or multiply by a negative, then it flips the sign. So let's look at some more of these. So undo the multiplication or division, like it says. When multiplying or dividing with inequalities, you have to flip the inequality, and that should say if it's negative. If you're dividing with inequalities and it's a negative number. So only negatives flip the sign.
Sydney.
So only negatives, okay? Not just multiplying and dividing, only if there is a negative, okay? Just like you guys, you don't like negatives, neither do your signs in the middle, okay? Only negatives. So let's look at example 3. So we've got all positive numbers. I got a positive 2, positive 12. So I know I'm not going to flip the sign. So we don't want to flip it. We're just going to solve it like we would solve an equation. So 2 times something is greater than 12. Since that's multiplication, I do the opposite. So divide by 2 on both sides. So t is greater than 6. Okay, but now I gotta look at example 4, and there's a negative number. I've got a negative 5. So that goes ahead and tells me that I'm gonna flip the sign. So you guys don't like negatives, neither does this guy. So he's gonna go ahead and flip himself around to be that. And so if I've got multiplying negative 5 times something is greater than or equal to 35, we want to divide. You have to always do the opposite when we're solving equations. So f is less than or equal to 35 divided by negative 5, which is going to be negative 7. Just like equations, you're doing the opposite to get rid of everything but the variable. Oh, example 4, part 2. We've got d something divided by 4. So d divided by 4 is less than or equal to 3. I've got all positive numbers, so don't flip the sign. We're just going to solve it like normal. So remember, if you have division, which is what this is, something divided by 4 is less than or equal to 3. So since I have division in the problem, the opposite would be to multiply. And we multiply on both sides. So d is less than or equal to positive 12. But then on example 5, looking at my problem, I have a negative number here and a negative number here. So that means I'm going to have to flip my sign. So flip the sign. And you guys can write this stuff out to the side if that'll help you. If you remember negatives, you flip the sign. So I've got d divided by negative 5 is less than negative 8. So something divided by negative 5 is less than 8. Remember, if it's division, the opposite to get that variable by itself would be to multiply. So times negative 5 on both sides. So it'll cancel out there. And then I'm left with d. Remember, flip the sign. So this guy turns into this guy. And negative 8 times negative 5 is positive 40. Okay, the next part of inequalities is the graphing part. And some of you seemed like you remembered this from last year. So that's good. If the sign is less than, just plain old less than by itself, there's no line underneath it, then you're going to put just an open circle over the number and shade toward the smaller number. Basically, since your sign looks like this, that's the direction you're going to shade in. It looks like it's pointing to the left, so that's the direction I'm going to shade. So then for greater than, just plain old greater than, there's no line underneath it. I'm going to put an open circle over the number and shade toward the bigger numbers. So your sign is pointing this way, that's the direction we're going to shade. Now, if it looks like this, where there's a line underneath it, so less than or equal to, we're going to shade that circle in, because remember when we looked at if it was equal to a number, you would shade it in because that's the solution. And so you do the same thing for less than or equal to and greater than or equal to. Put a shaded dot over the number and then shade toward the smaller numbers. Or if you get stuck, look at your sign. It's pointing to the left. So that's the direction I'm going to shade my numbers. And then same thing here, greater than, man, handwriting is not good. Greater than or equal to. Shaded in dot. My sign is pointing to the right, and so that's the direction I'm going to shade my line in. I always think of, if you have this line underneath it, think about it being like closing the door. There's a line underneath, I've closed the door, so close circle. The open ones, there's no line underneath, open circle. Open sign, open circle, closed sign, closed circle. So let's look at example 6 and we'll look at graphing it. So example 6, I have 8 plus h is greater than 43. So first thing I notice, all my numbers are positive. So I'm not going to flip the sign. So don't flip. And then I want to solve, just like I would solve an equation. I have to get rid of the 8. I have to get rid of something on this side because there's too much stuff over here. So to get rid of that 8, because I want to get this by itself, since it looks like a positive, there's no sign in front, so that tells me it's a positive. The opposite would be to subtract. So minus 8, and then we've got 43 minus 8 would be 35. And bring your sign down. So h is greater than 35. And on these little number lines, on the number line, I just went ahead and filled in with some numbers surround. I put the number of my solution in the middle and then just kind of filled in the numbers above and beyond it. So my sign, I shouldn't have done that. My sign is greater than, just plain greater than. There's no sign, there's no line underneath. It's an open circle. So I'm going to put an open dot on 35. And my sign is facing to the right. So it's saying h is greater than 35. So I'm going to shade my number line this way. Because what that means, h, whatever it is, it's some number that's bigger than 35. Okay, so anything bigger than 35 could be a solution. That's why we shade all of those numbers in, because these are all bigger than 35. So look at example 7. Same thing, except for I do notice I have a negative. So I'm going to flip the sign. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. So instead of greater than or equal to, I'm going to flip it to be less than or equal to. And just like we would solve a regular equation, -4 times e, so since that's multiplying, I'm going to divide on both sides. And then 28 divided by -4 is -7. And e is less than or equal to -7. Okay, so I went ahead and filled my number line in. Notice my numbers get bigger because the farther you go this way when we're dealing with negatives, the smaller those numbers are. The bigger the number, the bigger the digit, but the actual smaller it is. So -7 was my solution. It has this line underneath it, so closed door. So that's going to be a closed circle since it's got that line underneath it. So a closed circle on -7 because -7 could be a solution. My sign is facing this way, and it's saying it can be anything less than -7. Example 8, same thing.